Ethan Cole had been on Vaelaris Prime for exactly 9 hours when he discovered that the planet's engineers had designed a power grid capable of bending gravity, storing energy inside crystalline lattices, and predicting overloads 6 seconds before they occurred, but apparently nobody had invented a simple warning sign for doors. The first one opened upward, the second rotated. The third analyzed his hand, decided he was emotionally uncertain, and refused to let him through. "I'm an engineer," Ethan muttered at the glowing panel. "Emotional uncertainty is practically part of the certification." The door finally opened. Beyond it stretched the main energy control hall of Vaelaris, capital of Vaelaris Prime. Transparent walkways crossed a cavernous chamber filled with towers of blue-white light. Beneath the platforms, artificial gravity generators pulsed like mechanical hearts, feeding power toward distant districts through streams of quantum particles. Ethan stopped despite himself. Earth had impressive cities. Vaelaris had apparently looked at physics and decided it was merely a suggestion. "You are late." Ethan turned. Vaelyra stood several meters away, arms folded. She looked almost entirely human at first glance. Tall, graceful, long black hair falling over the shoulders of her dark silver uniform. Only her long, elegant ears revealed that she belonged to another species. They extended slightly upward through her hair, moving almost imperceptibly when she was annoyed. Ethan had already learned that Vaelyra's ears moved quite often around him. The door questioned my emotional stability. "It does that. And nobody thought that was strange?" "No. That explains a lot about this planet." The corner of Vaelyra's mouth moved, though she clearly intended to prevent it. She was the senior systems liaison assigned to Ethan's project and, more inconveniently, the eldest daughter of House Vaelyran, one of the most respected families on Vaelaris Prime. Ethan had learned that information only after casually asking her whether she lived nearby. 3 technicians had nearly dropped their tablets. Vaelyra had simply said, "My family owns the district." Ethan had stopped asking housing questions after that. They crossed the platform together, while Ethan reviewed a holographic schematic hovering above his wrist. "The Western Quantum Conduit is losing 17% efficiency," he said. 16.8. "You're correcting me over 0.2%? Yes. I'm beginning to understand why your engineers built judgmental doors." Before Vaelyra could answer, another voice drifted behind them. "She does that when she likes someone." Vaelyra stopped. Ethan turned. A second alien woman approached with an easy smile. For one confusing moment, Ethan thought he was seeing Vaelyra's reflection with a different personality. Elyssara possessed the same long black hair, the same striking features, and the same distinctive long ears, though her expression was warmer and considerably more dangerous in a different way. Her clothing was less formal, a flowing blue garment threaded with microscopic lights that shifted like stars whenever she moved. Vaelyra's eyes narrowed. "Why are you here?" "To see you. You never visit me at work." "Then clearly I came to see the human." Ethan lifted one hand. "I appreciate the honesty." Elyssara smiled at him. "So this is Ethan Cole. I was hoping there might be another one." "There isn't." "Unfortunate." Vaelyra resumed walking. Elyssara joined them without invitation. Ethan quickly discovered that the sisters had perfected a form of civilized warfare consisting entirely of polite sentences. Vaelyra criticized Elyssara's punctuality. Elyssara praised Vaelyra's ability to make a conversation feel like a military inspection. By the time they reached the observation balcony, Ethan had decided that repairing unstable quantum reactors was considerably safer than standing between them. Outside, the city shimmered beneath the pale afternoon sky. Towers curved upward like silver branches, connected by hovering transport lanes. Far beyond them, 2 enormous moons were already visible, one violet and one white. Thousands of floating lights were being installed throughout the streets. Ethan pointed toward them. "What's happening?" Elyssara leaned against the railing. The Festival of Twin Moons begins tomorrow. Vaelyra looked at Ethan. You were not informed? I was informed there would be a festival. Nobody told me the entire city would start glowing. That is considered obvious. On Earth, festivals usually involve questionable food and somebody playing music too loudly. Elyssara laughed. You should attend. I planned to. Both sisters became strangely quiet. Ethan noticed. What? Vaelyra glanced at Elyssara. Elyssara glanced at Vaelyra. That immediately worried him more than an alarm would have. You cannot attend alone, Vaelyra said. Ethan blinked. Why? Tradition. What kind of tradition? Every adult enters with a partner. Ethan considered this. What about my maintenance drone? Elyssara's ears twitched. No. It has a personality. No. A bad personality, admittedly. Vaelyra sighed. Machines were prohibited after the incident of the 49th festival. Ethan stared at her. I am absolutely asking about that later. He looked back toward the city. So unless I find someone by tomorrow, I stay here? Yes. That seems unnecessarily cruel. Ethan expected one of them to suggest a colleague. Instead, Vaelyra spoke first. You could accompany me. Silence. Ethan slowly turned toward her. Elyssara straightened. Valyra's expression remained perfectly composed, although the tips of her long ears had turned faintly red. Before Ethan could respond, Elyssara stepped forward. Or, she said pleasantly, you could choose me. Ethan looked from one sister to the other. The quantum reactor beneath them suddenly emitted a warning tone. For perhaps the first time in his life, Ethan was relieved to hear it. Ethan stared at Vaelyra, then at Elyssara, then back at Vaelyra. The reactor alarm continued chirping beneath the platform, but at that moment it sounded less like an emergency and more like an excuse sent personally by the universe. I should probably deal with that. Vaelyra did not move. The automatic systems already stabilized it. Ethan looked toward the holographic console. The red warning symbol had indeed disappeared. Of course they did. Elyssara folded her arms. You still have not answered. I was hoping the reactor might explode first. That can be arranged, Vaelyra said. Ethan looked at her. For half a second he could not tell whether she was joking. Then he saw the smallest hint of amusement in her eyes. That was somehow more alarming. He cleared his throat. You both understand that I need one partner, correct? Yes, Vaelyra replied. Yes, Elyssara said at exactly the same time. The sisters looked at each other. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Excellent, just establishing the geometry of the problem. They moved into a quieter engineering chamber where translucent data streams drifted through the air. Ethan pretended to inspect the Western conduit diagnostics while desperately hoping one of the sisters would explain what was happening. Neither did. Finally, he turned around. Why? Vaelyra raised an eyebrow. Why what? Why are two women from one of the most important families on this planet volunteering to escort a human engineer who got defeated by a door this morning? Elyssara smiled. I found that charming. I was arguing with architecture. Exactly. Vaelyra stepped closer to the central console. You are here as Earth's technical representative. Allowing you to remain outside the festival would reflect poorly on our hospitality. Elyssara immediately looked at her sister. How noble. Vaelyra ignored her. Elyssara leaned toward Ethan. She practiced that answer in her head. I did not. You used your diplomatic voice. I have one voice. You have 17. The frightening one is my favorite. Ethan raised both hands. I'm going to stand over here where the family history cannot reach me. He retreated toward the console. The diagnostic display suddenly projected a rotating map of the city. Across it, thousands of tiny lights marked festival preparations. Streets had been closed, Anti-gravity platforms were being positioned above plazas, and enormous crystalline arches were being raised throughout the capital. Ethan zoomed in. "What are those?" "Resonance gates," Vaelyra said. "For the ceremony," Elyssara added. "They look like quantum field amplifiers." "They are ceremonial," Vaelyra replied. Ethan studied the readings. "They are ceremonial quantum field amplifiers." Neither sister answered. He glanced at them suspiciously. "I'm learning that your civilization has a very flexible definition of decoration." Elyssara laughed. Later that afternoon, Vaelyra decided that if Ethan was going to attend the festival, he needed to learn the traditional opening dance. She brought him into a training chamber where a holographic instructor materialized as a glowing silver figure. "This cannot be difficult," Ethan said. Vaelyra gave him a long look. 20 minutes later, Ethan understood the arrogance of that statement. The dance required synchronized steps timed to shifting gravitational pulses. Every few seconds, the floor reduced gravity slightly, allowing dancers to turn through the air before landing. Ethan landed twice. The third time he collided with the wall. Elyssara, who had somehow appeared halfway through the lesson, applauded. "That was beautiful." "I hit a wall." With conviction. Vaelyra covered her mouth. Ethan pointed at her. "You laughed." "I did not." "You absolutely did." It was an involuntary respiratory response. That is the aristocratic definition of laughing? Elyssara moved toward the control panel. "Perhaps he needs a simpler training sequence." Vaelyra narrowed her eyes. "Do not touch that." Elyssara touched it. The music changed. The holographic instructor began performing exaggerated movements, arms waving, knees bending, head bobbing from side to side. Ethan followed carefully. "This one is easier." Elyssara bit her lip. Vaelyra stared at her sister. "Elyssara." "What?" "You loaded the larva dance." Ethan froze mid-step. "The what?" Elyssara finally burst into laughter. "It is traditionally performed by children pretending to be moon lizards." Ethan slowly lowered his arms. "I have been representing Earth as a moon lizard for 6 minutes. Very successfully." He pointed toward Elyssara. "You have lost diplomatic points." "I was never collecting them." Even Vaelyra laughed openly this time. For a brief moment, the tension disappeared. Ethan watched the sisters and realized something unexpected. Vaelyra looked different when she laughed. Younger, somehow. Less like the composed representative of House Vaelyran and more like someone who had spent years carefully controlling every word. Elyssara noticed him looking. Her smile faded just slightly. That evening, she insisted on showing Ethan the floating markets where festival visitors gathered beneath hovering lanterns. Vaelyra came too. "Coincidentally," she claimed. Elyssara did not bother arguing. The market drifted several meters above the central district, supported by silent gravity engines. Vendors sold glowing fruit, memory crystals, miniature drones, and fabrics that changed patterns according to the wearer's heartbeat. Ethan tried a violet drink. It immediately began steaming. "Should it do that?" "Yes," Elyssara said. "Inside me?" "Probably." "Your confidence is comforting." Vaelyra took the cup from him. "You are not drinking anything else she gives you." Elyssara smiled sweetly. "Protective already?" Vaelyra handed the cup back to the vendor. "Responsible." The sisters looked at each other again. Ethan recognized the expression now. Civilized warfare. Later, as the twin moons rose above the towers, Ethan stopped beside a transparent railing. "All right." Both sisters looked at him. "I will choose tomorrow." Elyssara's ears lifted slightly. Vaelyra became very still. "Before the festival," Ethan continued, "no tricks, no sabotage, and absolutely no more moon lizard dances." Elyssara nodded solemnly. "I promise nothing involving lizards." "That wording worries me." Vaelyra glanced toward her sister. For an instant, something unspoken passed between them. Ethan noticed it. What? Nothing, Vaelyra said. Elyssara suddenly became fascinated by the moons. Ethan narrowed his eyes. They were hiding something. He just had no idea that choosing one of them would mean far more than accepting an invitation to a festival. Ethan discovered the next morning that deciding between Vaelyra and Elyssara was considerably harder when both of them behaved as though they had already won. Vaelyra arrived at the engineering complex before sunrise, carrying 2 cups of something warm and silver. I thought humans consumed stimulants in the morning. Ethan accepted one cautiously. This isn't going to steam inside me, is it? No. Glow? No. Temporarily alter my perception of time? Vaelyra hesitated. Ethan lowered the cup. That hesitation was unnecessary. It contains only mild neural stimulants. On Earth we call that coffee. Your coffee is primitive, and yet it has never made me see tomorrow. Vaelyra almost smiled. They spent the next hour inspecting the Western Energy Network. The quantum conduits beneath Vaelaris had become increasingly unstable during the night. Gravitational pressure was rising in irregular waves, each fluctuation appearing several minutes after the other. Ethan projected the readings above the console. There, Vaelyra leaned closer. A line of blue data pulsed every 17 minutes. It is synchronized, she said, with something. Ethan expanded the planetary map and overlaid lunar movement. The pattern aligned perfectly. Both of them fell silent. The moons, Ethan murmured. Vaelyra's long ears shifted slightly. That should not be possible. Those are usually my favorite words. They descended into the maintenance levels beneath the city. Unlike the elegant towers above, the underground network was ancient. Walls built from dark alloy curved through tunnels far older than the modern capital. Strange crystalline circuits ran beneath transparent floor panels, pulsing in time with the distant gravitational generators. Ethan stopped at a sealed junction. This wasn't built by your current engineering guild. No. How old? Vaelyra looked at the markings along the wall. At least 4,000 years. Ethan stared. And you people are still using it? It functions. So does my grandfather's refrigerator. That doesn't mean I'd connect it to a planetary gravity grid. Vaelyra laughed quietly. The sound surprised him. For the first time since meeting her, they were alone without Elyssara turning every conversation into a competition. As they continued, Ethan noticed that Vaelyra seemed less guarded underground. Can I ask you something? That depends. Why did you really volunteer? Her steps slowed. You already asked. And you gave me the diplomatic answer. Vaelyra glanced at him. You noticed? Elyssara announced it publicly. Vaelyra sighed. For several moments, only the hum of old machinery filled the tunnel. My family expects me to behave correctly at all times, she finally said. Correct decisions, correct alliances, correct words. That sounds exhausting. It is considered privilege. That wasn't what I asked. Vaelyra looked at him differently then. I volunteered because you do not know what you are supposed to think of me. Ethan frowned. Was I supposed to think something? Exactly. Before he could answer, a sharp vibration passed through the floor. The tunnel lights flickered. A gravitational pulse lifted Ethan several centimeters into the air. He grabbed Vaelyra's arm. She grabbed his jacket. Then gravity returned. They landed awkwardly against the wall. Ethan stared at her. Very graceful. You stepped on my foot. I was busy discovering flight. A voice came from behind them. And I missed it? Elyssara approached, carrying a portable scanner. Vaelyra immediately released Ethan. Ethan looked between them. How did you find us? I tracked my sister. Vaelyra narrowed her eyes. You tracked me? Technically, I tracked Ethan. That is worse. I disagree. Elyssara raised the scanner. I found something you should see. She led them deeper into the tunnel to a chamber hidden behind an ancient maintenance panel. Symbols covered the walls, projected from embedded crystals. Ethan ran his hand near one inscription. "What language is this?" "Old Vaelyrian," Elyssara replied. Vaelyra looked surprised. "You can read it?" Elyssara shrugged. "I attended historical lectures." "You slept through historical lectures." "I absorbed knowledge horizontally." Ethan pointed at a repeated symbol showing two circles linked by a glowing line. "What does that say?" Elyssara's expression changed. "The bond of two moons." Vaelyra went very still. Ethan noticed immediately. "There it is again." "What?" "That look? The one both of you make whenever festival traditions come up." Neither answered. Ethan folded his arms. "Tell me." Elyssara looked at Vaelyra. Vaelyra looked toward the inscription. Finally, Elyssara exhaled. "The festival was not originally entertainment. I figured that out when I saw ceremonial quantum amplifiers. It was a bonding rite." Ethan waited. "For families?" "No." "For cities?" "No." He slowly looked at Vaelyra. "For two people?" "Yes." The silence lasted several seconds. Ethan pointed toward himself. "And when you said I needed a partner?" Vaelyra closed her eyes briefly. "In the oldest tradition, choosing someone meant declaring that person worthy of sharing your future." Ethan stared at both sisters. "You told me I needed someone to enter a festival." "You do," Elyssara said. "You neglected the part where I accidentally propose a shared future." "It is not exactly a proposal." Vaelyra gave her sister a look. Elyssara corrected herself. "It is proposal adjacent." Ethan rubbed both hands over his face. "So I wasn't choosing a dance partner?" Elyssara smiled nervously. "There is still dancing." "That is not helping." Another gravitational tremor shook the chamber. The ancient symbols flared brighter. The two circles on the wall began pulsing in perfect synchronization with the moons above. Ethan forgot the festival for a moment. He moved closer to the inscription. "This isn't just ceremonial." Vaelyra joined him. "What do you see?" Ethan watched the energy pattern spreading through the wall. "A system." Elyssara's smile disappeared. "What kind?" Ethan looked upward, toward thousands of tons of city built above them. "One that is waking up." Ethan remained in front of the glowing wall while the ancient symbols brightened one after another. The pulse did not spread randomly. It traveled outward through the buried conduits beneath Vaelaris, branching toward the same crystalline arches being raised across the city for the festival. He expanded his wrist display and overlaid the underground network. Vaelyra leaned closer. "Those conduits were marked inactive." "They are inactive in your modern system." Elyssara frowned. "That sounds like an unnecessarily worrying distinction." "It means your engineers stopped using them." Ethan pointed toward the spreading light. "Nobody told the conduits." Another tremor moved through the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Elyssara looked upward. "I preferred this festival when my largest problem was competing with my sister." "You were losing," Vaelyra said. "I was being merciful. You made him dance like a juvenile moon lizard." "And he was magnificent." Ethan raised a hand. "Can we postpone my humiliation until after the city stops trying to shake itself apart?" The sisters fell silent. He followed the energy pattern deeper into the chamber and discovered a narrow recess behind the inscriptions. Inside rested a crystalline mechanism shaped like two interlocking rings. No switches, no visible power source, no mechanical connections. Ethan held his scanner near it. The device reacted instantly. A hologram erupted across the room. A miniature version of Vaelaris Prime appeared beneath the twin moons. Thousands of luminous lines wrapped around the planet like a geometric web. At several points, massive energy spikes rose toward the moons. Vaelyra stared. "What are we seeing?" "A gravitational stabilization grid." Elyssara's expression hardened. "Why would our ancestors need one?" Ethan enlarged the lunar trajectories. The answer appeared almost immediately. When the twin moons reach alignment, Their combined gravitational pull produces resonance through the planet's crust, normally insignificant, but your capital sits above a gigantic crystalline deposit, Vaelyra understood first, which amplifies the resonance. Exactly. Elyssara looked toward the ceiling, and the festival begins during the alignment. Ethan slowly turned toward her. Not during it. He brought up the projected timeline. The festival begins exactly when this machine expects activation. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Elyssara said, "Are you suggesting our most sacred cultural celebration began as scheduled maintenance?" Ethan considered the hologram. "I'm suggesting your ancestors built a planetary stabilization system, and somehow future generations added music, glowing clothes, and romantic complications." Vaelyra folded her arms. "You are enjoying this." "A little." They returned to the surface and went directly to the Planetary Engineering Council. Ethan's explanation was received with the kind of silence normally reserved for extremely expensive mistakes. Councillor Theron, an elderly Vaelarian whose ceremonial robes contained enough gold to purchase a small spacecraft, stared at the holographic evidence. "You want us to cancel the Festival of Twin Moons because an ancient machine may malfunction?" "Not may." Ethan projected the latest reading. A red line climbed sharply. "Will." Theron's long ears stiffened. "The festival has not been cancelled in 3,000 years. Then you've had an excellent attendance record. This is not amusing." "No, the gravitational collapse is the serious part." Several council members exchanged uneasy glances. Vaelyra stepped forward. "House Vaelyran supports Engineer Cole's recommendation." The room changed immediately. Ethan looked at her. Vaelyra did not look back. Theron's jaw tightened. "Your family understands what cancellation would mean?" "It would mean people remain alive long enough to complain about it." Elyssara smiled faintly. Ethan decided he liked Vaelyra's diplomatic voice much more when it was threatening politicians. But the council refused to cancel the ceremony without proof of immediate danger. They had 6 hours. Elyssara led Ethan and Vaelyra into the restricted archives beneath the Hall of Memory. Rows of crystal records stretched through a chamber where artificial intelligence custodians floated as spheres of pale light. "You have access to this place?" Ethan whispered. "No." He stopped. Elyssara continued walking. "Then why are we inside?" "My mother has access." "That is not the same sentence. It is when you know her security code." Vaelyra stared at her sister. "You stole Mother's archive authorization?" "Borrowed." "She will destroy you." "Only if the city survives." Ethan nodded. "Good motivation." They searched records from the earliest Festival of Twin Moons until Elyssara discovered a damaged archive fragment. The hologram showed ancient Vaelyrians standing beneath the same crystalline arches now decorating Vaelaris. But they were not dancing. 2 individuals stood at each control structure, palms pressed against luminous interfaces. Ethan stepped closer. 2 operators. Vaelyra studied the image. "Pairs." "The tradition came from this," Elyssara whispered. Ethan examined the technical symbols. The paired operators were synchronizing biological neural patterns to stabilize the gravitational field. Over thousands of years, the technical procedure had become ceremony, then custom, then symbolism. "The partner requirement," Ethan said. "It was never originally romantic." Elyssara glanced at Vaelyra. "That is going to make several thousand years of poetry extremely embarrassing." Before Vaelyra could respond, every light in the archive went dark. A second later, emergency illumination flooded the chamber. The floor tilted. Ethan slammed one hand against a console as a deep metallic sound rolled beneath the city. His wrist display flashed red. Gravitational cascade detected. Vaelyra stepped beside him. "How long?" Ethan watched the numbers accelerate. The festival crowds were already gathering above them. "Not 6 hours." Elyssara moved closer. "How long?" Ethan looked at both sisters. 43 minutes. Far overhead, the first ceremonial bells of the Festival of Twin Moons began to ring. The first ceremonial bells were still echoing across Vaelaris when Ethan, Vaelyra, and Elyssara reached the central plaza. Thousands of people had already gathered beneath the crystalline arches. Floating lanterns drifted above the crowd in slow spirals, projecting constellations into the air. Music rolled between the towers, while dancers moved across suspended platforms held several meters above the ground by gravity fields. Nobody knew the city had 43 minutes. Ethan looked at his wrist display. 39 now. Elyssara stared at him. You said 43. We took the scenic route through several collapsing corridors. Vaelyra activated her family channel. I am ordering evacuation of the central districts. A warning flashed across her display. Access denied. She stared at it. Ethan glanced over. Apparently your prestigious family has been defeated by bureaucracy. I am beginning to understand why humans shout at machines. A sudden pulse struck the plaza. The gravity field flickered. Hundreds of floating lanterns dropped several meters before shooting upward again. People laughed, assuming it was part of the ceremony. Ethan did not. That was the first cascade. He turned toward the largest crystalline arch at the center of the plaza. The primary control interface is beneath that. Elyssara looked toward the crowd. We cannot reach it without causing panic. Then don't cause panic. How? Ethan looked at Vaelyra. Vaelyra understood immediately. A minute later, she stepped onto the ceremonial platform and activated the public projection system. Her image appeared above the plaza, enlarged in silver light. Citizens of Vaelaris, she began with perfect calm. The opening sequence of tonight's festival has been modified. Ethan whispered to Elyssara. That is a very elegant way of saying the city may explode. She practiced. Vaelyra continued. Please proceed toward the outer terraces as part of the revised ceremony. The crowd began moving, slowly at first. Then another gravitational pulse shook the plaza. A transport platform tilted sideways. People screamed. The illusion of celebration vanished. Now they believe her, Ethan said. The three of them descended through a maintenance shaft beneath the central arch. The ancient chamber below was already awake. Two circular interfaces blazed with white light, while the central quantum core rotated between them. The core was enormous, a sphere of compressed energy held inside magnetic rings older than most human nations. Ethan scanned it. Two biological interfaces, just like the archive. Vaelyra stepped toward the first. Elyssara moved to the second. Ethan looked between them. You both understand this may hurt. Elyssara placed her hand against the glowing surface. You still have not chosen between us. This is your moment to mention that? I dislike unfinished conversations. Vaelyra touched the other interface. You can annoy him later. Elyssara smiled. So you agree there will be a later. The interface is activated. Both sisters gasped. Lines of light raced from their palms up their arms, mapping neural patterns through the ancient system. The chamber stabilized for 3 seconds. Then the quantum core screamed. Ethan's scanner exploded with warnings. There's a ruptured conduit inside the containment ring. Vaelyra struggled to keep her hand in place. Can it be repaired? Yes. Then repair it. Ethan stared at the core. From inside, Elyssara's face tightened. That sounds worse. It is. He removed his outer jacket and opened a maintenance hatch. Superheated light poured through the gap. Vaelyra turned toward him. Ethan, if both of you disconnect, the city loses stabilization. We know. If I don't fix the conduit, you lose it anyway. Elyssara looked at him. And if the containment field collapses while you are inside? Ethan climbed into the narrow passage. Then I recommend remembering me as extremely handsome. You are impossible. Good. Impossible people are difficult to kill. He disappeared into the core. Inside, gravity changed direction every few seconds. Ethan crawled along the inner frame while arcs of blue energy snapped around him. His suit displayed rapidly rising radiation levels. 20 meters ahead, the ruptured conduit glowed white. He reached it and pulled out his repair tool. Found it. Vaelyra's voice came through his communicator, strained. Can you fix it? Of course. A violent pulse threw Ethan against the wall. He grunted. Eventually. The conduit had fused into the surrounding lattice. He cut through the damaged section while the ancient machine tried repeatedly to turn him into vapor. Outside, Vaelyra and Elyssara began losing synchronization. Elyssara's knees buckled. Vaelyra shouted, "Stay with me!" "I am trying." "You always say that when you are losing." Elyssara laughed weakly. "Then I suppose I should win." Their neural patterns aligned again. Ethan saw the field stabilize on his display. "Whatever you two just did, keep doing it." "We insulted each other," Elyssara replied. "Excellent. Your civilization may survive entirely because of sibling rivalry." He connected the final conduit. Nothing happened. Ethan stared. "Oh, come on." He struck the housing with the handle of his tool. The conduit ignited. Power surged through the chamber. Vaelyra heard him. "Did you just hit ancient technology? It is a respected human repair method." The quantum core accelerated. Then the final rupture occurred. A wave of energy blasted Ethan backward. The containment alarm screamed. Outside, both sisters were thrown to their knees. "Disconnect!" Ethan shouted. Vaelyra refused. Elyssara refused. "Do it." "No," Vaelyra said. "Absolutely not," Elyssara added. Ethan looked at the readings. The sisters were holding the entire stabilization grid together through sheer neural synchronization. He understood then. They were not competing anymore. Not for the festival. Not for him. Vaelyra reached mentally through the interface toward Elyssara. Their patterns merged. The ancient machine responded. Every crystalline arch across Vaelaris illuminated at once. The gravitational cascade stopped. Silence filled the chamber. Ethan slowly crawled out of the core, smoke rising from one sleeve. Elyssara looked at him. "You look terrible." "Thank you." Vaelyra released the interface and immediately grabbed his arm. "You are injured." "I prefer dramatically singed." They climbed back into the plaza. Above them, the twin moons had aligned perfectly. Thousands of citizens were staring. Nobody spoke. Then someone began applauding. Another joined. Within seconds, the entire plaza erupted. Ethan stood between Vaelyra and Elyssara, exhausted, dirty, and covered in coolant. He looked at the celebration. "So," he said quietly, "saving the capital means I can skip the dance, correct?" Both sisters answered together. "No." Ethan closed his eyes. "Of course not." By sunrise, Vaelaris had stopped trembling. The emergency barriers were gone, the damaged gravity lanes had been stabilized, and the crystalline arches across the capital now glowed with a calmer, softer light. Engineers from every district crowded the underground chambers, arguing enthusiastically over systems their ancestors had apparently hidden beneath their feet for thousands of years. Ethan sat on the edge of a maintenance platform with a bandage around one forearm and a cup of actual coffee someone from the human delegation had found for him. Vaelyra approached first. "You are supposed to be resting." "I am resting." "You are sitting inside an active engineering site." "That is where engineers rest." She looked at the cup. "What is that?" "Primitive coffee." Vaelyra took it from him, tried a sip, and immediately frowned. "This is terrible." Ethan held out his hand. "Give it back." She did. Elyssara appeared a moment later carrying 3 archive crystals. "I found something." Ethan groaned. "Please tell me it is not another tradition." "It is another tradition." He looked toward the ceiling. "I saved this planet yesterday. I deserve better." They followed Elyssara to a quiet chamber where she activated the oldest recovered records. A holographic projection appeared. Ancient Vaelarians entered a ceremonial plaza in pairs exactly as they had seen before, but the accompanying translation was different from the later versions. Vaelyra read it slowly. "Enter beside the one whose judgment you trust." Ethan looked at Elyssara. That is all? There is more. The next line appeared. Stand with the one you would choose in uncertainty. Silence followed. Elyssara folded her arms. So apparently several thousand years of aristocrats turned trust into courtship. Vaelyra sighed. My family has written entire books about the romantic meaning of this ritual. That is going to be embarrassing. Ethan smiled. For the historians? For everyone. The discovery spread through Vaelaris by midday. The Planetary Council officially declared that the original Festival of Twin Moons had been both a social trust ceremony and a technical synchronization event. The romantic interpretation had developed centuries later. Counselor Theron personally thanked Ethan for preventing the collapse. He did so with the expression of a man who deeply disliked being grateful. You have rendered extraordinary service to Vaelaris Prime. Ethan nodded. Does extraordinary service include exemption from ceremonial dancing? No. Ethan looked toward Vaelyra. Your government is cruel. Theron walked away before Ethan could say anything worse. Later, Vaelyra and Elyssara brought him to one of the upper terraces overlooking the city. For once, neither sister was arguing. That worried him. Vaelyra spoke first. I owe you honesty. That would be refreshing. She ignored the joke. When I volunteered to accompany you, I told myself it was duty. Ethan waited. It was not entirely duty. Elyssara leaned against the railing. She likes you. Vaelyra turned. I was capable of saying it. You were taking too long. Ethan laughed. Vaelyra's ears colored slightly. I like that you speak to me without caring about my family name. Ethan's expression softened. I did not know I was supposed to care. That is precisely the point. Elyssara looked toward the city. My reason was less dignified. Vaelyra raised an eyebrow. That is unsurprising. Elyssara ignored her. I volunteered because you never treated me as Vaelyra's irresponsible younger sister. Ethan looked at her. You are irresponsible. Elyssara smiled. Yes. But you noticed I was also useful. You broke into a restricted archive. Exactly, useful. Vaelyra laughed. The old rivalry between them had changed. It had not vanished completely. Ethan suspected nothing short of a planetary extinction event could accomplish that, but it no longer felt sharp. He looked from one sister to the other. I spent the last 2 days thinking I had to choose correctly. Elyssara tilted her head. And now? Now I think that was the mistake. Vaelyra studied him. Ethan continued. I barely know this world. I barely know either of you. But I do know what happened underground. He looked toward the glowing city. You trusted each other when everything depended on it. Elyssara became quiet. And you both trusted me. Vaelyra nodded. I do. So I am not making some dramatic, lifelong decision because an ancient tradition got mistranslated by romantic aristocrats. Elyssara smiled. That is disappointingly sensible. I nearly got vaporized yesterday. I have earned sensible. That evening the festival resumed, not as originally planned. The music was quieter. The celebration felt different. People entered the plaza with spouses, siblings, friends, children, teachers, and colleagues. The meaning had changed back into something older. Trust. Ethan stood at the entrance beneath the largest crystalline arch. Vaelyra arrived on his left. Elyssara arrived on his right. Both extended a hand. Ethan stared at them. You planned this. No, Vaelyra said. Yes, Elyssara said. Vaelyra looked at her sister. Elyssara shrugged. We are rebuilding honesty. Ethan took both hands. Together, they entered the plaza. An elderly nobleman nearby stared at them in open confusion. You cannot enter with 2 partners. Ethan stopped. The old man pointed. You must choose. Ethan looked at Vaelyra, then Elyssara. Both were smiling. He remembered the frightened engineer who had arrived on Vaelaris believing every problem had one correct solution. He was beginning to understand that people were not machines. Some things were not meant to be solved. They were meant to be lived. Ethan faced the nobleman. I did choose. The man frowned. Which one? Ethan tightened his grip on both sisters' hands. I chose not to get murdered by either of them. Elyssara burst out laughing. Vaelyra tried to remain dignified for exactly 2 seconds before failing. The three of them continued beneath the glowing arch. Above Vaelaris, the twin moons remained aligned. Below them, the ancient stabilization grid hummed steadily. And for the first time in thousands of years, the Festival of Twin Moons began not with an obligation, but with a choice.